What if I told you that you are already in heaven right now? What if you knew that you are already in eternity? That you are right now in the middle of eternity? And that this, your life at this moment, is the promised land? That there's nowhere to get, there's nowhere to go, that this present moment is the happiest place we can possibly be. This is the realization of oneness. And it is in the book, The End of Your World by Adyashanti, that I am awakening to this understanding that right now is heaven, except for one thing: our own thoughts of suffering. Let's eliminate these thoughts of suffering and get to heaven today. Let's rock. Welcome to the Good Mood Revolution. I'm your host, Matt O'Neill, and I've spent the last 15 years mastering the art of lasting happiness. Look, happiness isn't just a feeling, it is a skill, and it's a skill that you can learn and master. This show is your training ground. Let your Good Mood Revolution begin now. So when I was with Eckhart Tolle and learning from this great master, of course, there were amazing other people at the conference. And I was having lunch with one of these guys, and he said, "Hey, have you heard of this book, The End of Your World, by a guy named Adyashanti?" I had not heard of it. He said, "It is the best book I've read on enlightenment." Now, enlightenment, this is this big fuzzy topic. And he said, it's not that at all. He said, it is so down to earth. It is talking to human beings exactly where we are about the things that cause us suffering and then how not to suffer. Well, of course, for me, with the Good Mood Revolution, I just want to teach people how not to suffer, because when we're not suffering, we're happy, right? And that's the whole point of this thing, is that we need to be enjoying our life. So I bought the book right there. I went on Amazon on my phone right at lunch, and I said, okay, I'm going to get it. This is the book. And I couldn't put it down. It was so good. It was so clear. And it was so to the point of how to feel good every single day without letting challenges or tough things that get in our way stop us from feeling good. So I've spent a lot of time with the book. I've written just pages and pages and pages of notes. And that's how I really digest something that's big and that I want to understand so that I can teach to others. And then I've been through those notes. I've read through my own notes a number of times. And this morning, I've written out this episode based on my notes from Adyashanti. So I'm going to get into it. And, it starts out with the trajectory of every human being is toward enlightenment, or what Adyashanti calls a full awakening. It's towards oneness. So your trajectory, if you're listening to this, your trajectory is toward a understanding of oneness, that all is one, all is coming from the divine, including you. And the people that you don't like, the people that you do like, the situations you don't like, the situations you do like, it is all one. And there's no separateness. Well, this concept, of course, again, is bigger than my understanding. But this episode is going to be so useful and so practical, because he says no matter where you are in your journey as a human, this information is relevant. So if you've had an awakening, which I have not, or if you haven't had an awakening, he said the process of awakening is the same from before and after. It's basically undoing thoughts that make us suffer. And, the thoughts that make us suffer are the thoughts that ignore the oneness of life. In terms of awakening, all that matters is right now. Am I awake right here and right now? When we're suffering, we are not awake. When we're feeling full of love and life and compassion and empathy and happiness, we're awake in that moment. So you and me, we have these moments of feeling totally connected with everything that's around us, with the people around us, feeling at one, or what Mihai Csikszentmihalyi calls flow. When we're in that moment, we're awake in this moment. So we want to spend more moments like that because we'll be happier. So the basic premise is that the egoic structure is not true. The egoic structure is who we think we are in our mind, but it's not who we actually are. Whatever interpretation the mind is making is literally nothing but a dream in the mind and the body. So a way of describing this is that you can see a beautiful tree. You can take in the magnificence of a beautiful tree. But as soon as you label it, that's a tree, you take it from seeing the whole essence of the tree to now making it a mental construct and saying, that's a tree. It has branches. It has bark. I can see ants crawling on it. We've just gone from taking in the fullness of reality, which is beyond, it's so much bigger than thought, to then naming it with thought. And now we are outside of reality and we're experiencing a virtual reality, a reality in our minds. Well, this is really, really useful to know. When we're experiencing the fullness of reality, this is happiness. Like, imagine taking in just a magnificence of a beautiful sunset. In that moment, we're just in awe. Once we get into our thoughts and our mind and start to say, oh, that's a beautiful sunset, or, hey, I wonder what we'll do for dinner, or, hey, this thing happened yesterday, we leave the magnificence of the grandiosity of reality and go into the smallness of our mind. And everything in our mind is not a full truth. So Adyashanti says, do not ask the question, how do I awaken? Instead, ask, how do I unenlighten myself? Which situations in life cause me to go into suffering and separation? How is it specifically I'm pulling myself into an illusion? When do I get lost in judgment or blame? He said, every time I believe a thought, I'm putting myself back into the dream state. And this is where suffering occurs, is in the dream state, in our thoughts. The truth of our being is not content until it has freed itself from all of its own misunderstandings and all illusions. So here's some questions we can ask ourselves. What in me can still go into this idea of division or separateness? What in me can still go into hate, ignorance, or greed? What in me can cause me to feel isolated or full of sorrow? In my book, Good Mood Revolution, I talk about the 8 bad moods of the ego. And I talk about how each bad mood is just a lie. Each one of these bad moods we experience has an associated lie that we're believing. Adyashanti is saying it in a different way. He's saying that anytime we're suffering, we're believing a lie of the ego. It's just, we're both saying the same thing, just in different terminology. So as we suffer, that's a moment we get to ask ourselves, what am I believing right now? And knowing that all suffering is just a lie or an illusion, we then get to dismantle the illusion, and then the suffering disappears, because literally we're making it up in our mind, because the fullness of reality is not suffering. It's really beautiful. So another question to ask is, what are the spots in me that are less awakened? That which is awakened in us is compassionate. Its nature is unconditional love. And it's connected to our true nature that feels amazing. This is lasting happiness. It's not fleeting happiness. When we're connected to the true nature of things, it's just love. It just feels like unconditional love, because that is the true nature of you. It's the true nature of me, and it's the true nature of all things. So anytime we're not feeling unconditional love, we're believing a lie of the mind. Adyashanti calls these Velcro thoughts. And I love this analogy. He said, Velcro has little hooks in it, and it's got a lot of little hooks. So when you Velcro something to something else, the little hooks grab all the pieces and then it gets stuck. Well, the same thing happens with these Velcro thoughts. Like a Velcro thought could be a thought of fear, or a thought of sadness, or a thought that, hey, things shouldn't be this way. And we get Velcroed and hooked into that idea, hey, things shouldn't be this way. They should be different than they are. And that Velcro thought now hooks us in, and we can get totally lost in this idea that things should be different than they really are. Each of the 8 bad moods contains a whole world in itself. So the 8 bad moods that I write about in my book are shame, guilt, hopelessness, fear, sadness, desire, anger, and pride. When we're caught in any of these moods, let's just say anger is a whole world in itself. It sees the world in its own way. It thinks in its own way. It acts in its own way. So when we're lost in a Velcro thought of anger, we now are seeing the world with anger glasses on. Everything we see now looks different. It looks like anger. And so we can ask ourselves, if this feeling of anger could talk, what would it say? And it has a whole story. And these stories, they're universal. When you feel anger, your story is universally anger. And when I feel anger, my story is universally anger. Anger says the same thing every time. It always has the same lie. It's the same lie for you, and it's the same lie for me. Anger says somebody did something wrong and they shouldn't have done it. That's its story. That story is a lie. As we believe that story, we suffer. The wait is finally over. The Good Mood Revolution book is officially available for pre-order on Amazon today. You can go to Amazon and look for Good Mood Revolution book. And in this book, you're going to find the 8 bad moods that get in the way of your happiness. You're going to learn strategies on how to overcome each of these 8 negative thoughts. They're all lies anyway. And then what the thought patterns are that make us happy every single day. You're also going to learn strategies that can make you really feel fulfilled in your life and make other people around you feel fulfilled as well. So go on Amazon, look for Good Mood Revolution book, and order yours today. Where do these Velcro beliefs come from? They come from our childhood. When we were young, an event could happen that caused us more pain than we were able to face head on. And we came up with a belief that allowed us to survive the situation. You know, I think of myself as a 5-year-old and my dad basically abandoning his duties as a dad. Well, that was really painful, and it was bigger than my 5-year-old brain to comprehend. And so I couldn't understand it. And so the belief that I came up with was that I don't deserve to be loved by a dad. There's something wrong with me. Well, that was a belief I could understand. And it was a belief that kind of defined the whole rest of my life up until the point that I uncovered it and reclaimed the truth that there was nothing wrong with me, that in fact I was beautiful and perfect the way I was. I just didn't know it because my little brain was trying to survive. It was in so much pain by not having a dad around that it couldn't understand it. And so something it could understand, my little brain said, well, there's obviously something wrong with me then, that people would leave me. I could understand that. And then once I had a solution that there was something wrong with me, then I could work on doing something about it. Well, I'll just try to make everything right. I'll try to please everybody around me. I'll try to be perfect. I'll try to be the perfect little boy. I'll try to get perfect grades. I'll try to prove that there is something right about me. In a lot of ways, that served me. I went and got good grades, and I did things that made people like me, and that helped me get through a painful time. But then, when I became older, that same root belief that there was something wrong with me, it never was healed because it had been implanted by me at the age of 5. And so I had to go in and find that. And what happened is life continued to give me situations where people would leave me. Girlfriends, right? I would cheat on them to get them to leave me because I had this belief there was something wrong with me and people would leave me. And so I would create the exact thing that proved that I was right, that there was something wrong with me and people should leave me. After enough pain of all these breakups and all of the struggle, I finally realized, hey, I'm being run by this subconscious Velcro belief there's something wrong with me. And I got to question the thought, is this thought even true that there's something wrong with me? And I got to see, no, that's not a true thought. Then I got to replace it with, there's so much right with me. And boy, that makes everything feel so much better. So that you've got some root beliefs that you created when you were little. Think back on some experiences that were bigger than you could handle. And then what were some beliefs that you came to as a child that now have shaped your whole life? As an adult now, you can go back and say, are those beliefs true? Or what is a different belief that would serve me better now? When a Velcro thought arises, it is your primary job to see that the opposite of that thought is just as true. When you see this, the whole system of the thought collapses. This is the work of Byron Katie. As you know, I'm a huge fan of Byron Katie's work. When I'm struggling with a thought, like for instance, that person is such a jerk, I look at the opposite and I say, okay, well, that person is such an amazing person. Both of those thoughts are equally true and equally untrue because they're thoughts. Neither of them are actually reality. They're just constructs of the mind. But believing that that person is a jerk and that's the only way they are is a suffering thought. And then seeing that the opposite is true, that that person is also an amazing human being and probably pretty lovely and pretty awesome as well, and coming up with reasons why they are awesome, collapses the thought that they're a jerk. And that thought that they're a jerk is the thought that was causing me suffering. Any information we make in our minds is in conflict with the way that life really is. So we come to heaven by way of suffering. We come to truth and freedom by way of mental bondage. We see that our illusions are the doorways to our freedom. Each moment of mental suffering is our invitation to freedom from our thinking. In this way, suffering becomes an act of divine love. Man, that's awesome. All of a sudden, it gives meaning to these horrible things we have to go through, to loss, to, pain, and to physical pain, and to sickness, and to loss of a job or loss of an ability. I mean, all of these things really, really hurt. But if we see them as opportunities to grow closer to the oneness of all of creation by breaking down illusions, they can be seen as gifts from God. And that gives us so much more meaning as we navigate things that are really challenging. Are you looking to take your happiness to another level? If you're looking to be more successful, we need to be happier because success and happiness go hand in hand. But sometimes we get stuck in thought patterns we don't even know are holding us back. And we need a coach or a mentor to see things we can't see with our own eyes. I've had coaches and mentors help me access levels of happiness I couldn't have achieved without them. I'm now offering that same service to a small, select number of people. If you think one-on-one coaching could elevate your happiness, go to mattoneil.com and click the coaching tab to learn more. I look forward to talking with you. Each moment is a moment that needs to be happening. That's a profound statement. Each moment is a moment that needs to be happening. It's when we argue with reality and say, this moment shouldn't be happening the way that it's happening, that we create pain. When we have full acceptance that this moment is a moment that is inevitable and needs to be happening, we don't add unnecessary suffering on top of an already challenging situation. When we awaken to this fact, we give the gift of freedom to the whole world to be exactly as it is. We give the gift to all people. We let them have the freedom to be exactly who they are. Until I give the whole world its freedom, I'll never have my freedom. Give everyone the freedom to not like you. Give everyone the freedom to disagree with you. You no longer need to try to control anyone. You don't need their approval. When the ego is not running the show, you don't need anything to be different than the way it is. We can let go of control. We can let go of manipulation. We can just be and be content with the way everything is. This is freedom from suffering. This is happiness. As we love reality the way it is, we get to be happy in reality, which is the only place we get to live. And as we resist reality and say it shouldn't be this way, we are creating suffering in the only reality that really is. The truth of oneness. You are like a ray of sunshine from the one that emanates all. Everything is spirit. Spirit manifests as all things and all beings. We are all one. We are all emanation of the same exact spirit. There is a fearlessness in this realization. Once we realize that we are the one spirit, that everything else is at the same time, the thoughts that I'm this separate individual, isolated thing that can be hurt and harmed and killed and eliminated, all that fear goes away. We're like, wow, I am the spirit that was before time, that was before I was born, that will be here after I die. I am that one spirit along with everything else. All of a sudden, we don't see other people as our adversaries. We don't see other people as our enemies. We see other people as ourselves. Like we're all one. I love seeing pictures from outer space, like from way out in outer space, looking back on Earth. And Earth is this tiny little speck in the middle of vast black darkness. And in that moment, when I see Earth as this little tiny speck and just infinite empty space, I see the reality that everyone on Earth is just one. We're on one Earth. We are one group of people. We are one with the plants and the animals. We are one with the water. This is one Earth, and we are one organism. As we destroy each other, we're destroying ourselves. As we destroy the plants, we're destroying ourselves. As we destroy the animals, we're destroying ourselves. What if we're just one? Well, man, it makes life so much more peaceful. And if somebody else is angry with us, that's their own thing. We don't have to be angry back. We can see them as the one, like we're the one. And again, a massive amount of fearlessness comes from this because we realize we're not going to die. And maybe, this body will die and this personality will die, but we'll continue on knowing that we are the one spirit. Adyashanti goes on, he says, truth is the highest good. Truth is the greatest expression of love. Truth and love, in fact, are identical. So when we resist the truth, we're falling out of love. We do this by creating fear in our mind. And fear is always only in the mind. Fear constructs the illusion of the ego, the illusion of separateness, and the illusion that we can be eliminated. But all of that is just an illusion. It's not truth. It's just a mental construct. He says, life is full of grace. Sometimes we experience wonderful grace, like the day I met my wife, the day my children were born healthy. This is wonderful grace. And sometimes it's fierce grace, like the car crash or the intense emotional pain I felt through what I thought was betrayal, to the point that I was just sobbing in my car. And in that moment, I prayed to God and I said, God, I need your help. I cannot understand this. I cannot bear this pain any longer. What is going on? And then there was grace. There was an understanding. There was an understanding that I wasn't being harmed, that my thoughts about the situation were the only thing that was harming me. Adyashanti says the same thing. He says, sometimes we make the greatest leaps in our consciousness when life has us on our knees. Life has a tremendous capacity to wake us up from our dream, the dream of fear and of separation. Oh, this is nice. This means that all of our problems are really just gifts. They're gifts on a path to show us the truth. And the truth is full of grace and wonderful, incredible things. He says, as we awaken, we see that nothing in the structure of thought is ultimately true. He likens the mind to a tool. He said the mind is like a tool. It's like a computer. It's like a hammer. And he said, you should not ask the mind the right or wrong thing to do. You wouldn't ask a computer or a hammer what to do. And I know you could say, I could go to ChatGPT and ask it what to do. I wouldn't trust ChatGPT with big decisions in my life. So we want to ask God what to do. We don't want to ask our mind. We want to ask to be guided. We want to ask reality what to do. We want to look at life, see reality, know that reality is love and that it's the highest truth, and then ask to be guided from someplace outside of the mind. For me, like I just feel it in my heart. And I feel God talking to me in my heart. And that is what I want to ask what to do, not the mind. The mind is empty of reality. He uses this example. He says, you can have a thought of a glass of water, but if you are dying of thirst, you cannot drink your thought. Likewise, your whole sense of self, of the egoic self, and your whole sense of the world is made up by the thought of your mind. The structure of thought holds no intrinsic reality, like that glass of water you think of, you can't drink. So this means the whole world as you perceive it in the mind has no reality. This goes back to that example of the tree. You can experience the reality of the tree by being and being with the tree, but you cannot experience the reality of the tree in your mind by labeling it or thinking about it. You can only experience reality by actual experience. When we truly comprehend this, that who we think we are in our mind is not reality, and that what we think the world is in our mind is not reality, it is earth-shaking. We stop relying on the mind so much. We start just being in the world. And that's where we're happy. We're happy outside of the mind. We're happy as we are being. And it's also so relieving. We recognize that all emotional turmoil is caused by our thinking. And when we know that no thoughts are fully true, we know that no emotional turmoil needs to be there. When you have emotional turmoil, it is now your entry point into the illusion of the mind and into the thoughts that keep you separate from love, unity, and oneness. No thought that causes division is true. As soon as you say something shouldn't have happened, you're creating division. When you argue with reality, you're not going to win that fight. Anytime you argue with the reality, you are bound to suffer. So the trajectory of all spiritual awakening is toward a surrender. It boils down to letting go of the illusion of the separate self. It boils down to letting go of the way we think the world should be or shouldn't be. The trajectory of our being is toward loving the world exactly as it is. As we do this, we experience tremendous ease. We experience so much relief and so much peace. Enlightenment is the natural state of being. As we experience division or separateness, it doesn't feel natural. It feels conflicted. We realize when we do this, when we see the oneness of all of life, that all along we've already been in the promised land. We have all along already been in the kingdom of heaven. This is a massive topic. It was such a cool book to read. It's such a fun lesson to teach. Today, you are in the kingdom of heaven. You are already in the promised land. The only thing keeping you from realizing it is believing your own suffering thoughts. So let's put them down. Let's stop the suffering. Let's stop the illusion. And let's recognize the truth that all is already perfect the way it is. Thank you all for listening. We will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode with Matt O'Neill.